Welcome back, everybody. Episode 20. Oh my God, I can't even believe we're up to episode 20 already. Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And today I have an amazing special guest. Her name is Leah Pardee, and she got to me through Instagram, and we just like aligned in energetics. And you guys will see the vibration we bring through on this podcast today of similarities of beliefs. We're going to talk about all different kinds of stuff from breath work, how we hold trauma in the body, manifestation, how that shows up within our fields and how we move that through, how becoming centered and present will change your life. We also talk about being unapologetically you and how to step into that and move through that in your vibrational field. And just so much other juiciness is dropping into this podcast today. And I am just so excited that I get to bring guests on that have this different vibration and their frequency in the world. They get to step in and serve you guys every single week, consistently all the time, and we get to hash it out. So she is an amazing vibrational light. She, assists really in her mission on earth is helping people really, dismantle the infrastructures in their life, keeping them small. And I cannot wait to share with you today Leah Pardee here on episode 20 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. Here you go, guys. Oh, Leah, I am like so excited to jump into this conversation with you. I've been naturally stalking you on Instagram, looking at your content, stepping into this space because I didn't know you before you connected with me. So I'm so excited to kind of share your energy into the field today and to really kind of serve the people in whatever conversation drops in. So welcome to the podcast.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here and I'm like obsessed with your energy. So this is going to be really good.
Oh, thank you so much. I know it's going to be so good. Okay, let's open up with this question and see where it's going to lead us. What does a light warrior mean to you?
So I feel like a light warrior is someone who's fiercely and unapologetically shining their light on the world. Like a light worker, yeah, someone who's shining their light, someone who's, has a healing energy they're maybe bringing healing tools. But I feel like this is like a more fierce take on that. Like you're doing it regardless of the fear that might be in the way. But you're like doing it anyways.
Yes. And obviously the term warrior means that you're fully stepping in and embodying, and it doesn't mean that you don't have the fear. You step in with the courage to do it anyways. And I know that this is probably part of a pathway you are really juicily leading within in the world. Because I know that some of your brand is about unapologetically being yourself. So tell me what that actually means in the field of energy that you work within and how it's showing up in your field now that you're starting to see it come together and come to life.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a really strong sense of being authentically you. It's so easy to get caught up in what are other people thinking? What expectations do other people have of me? Who am I supposed to be? But when we really look at who we want to be and who we truly are and who we've always been underneath all those layers that we kind of like those masks we put on for society, like there's something really real and authentic in there. And it takes being unapologetic to shed those layers, take off those masks, show up how you want to show up for the world. So for me, with doing energy work, I teach breath work, I'm a mentor, and I do all these things.
Yep.
And it's been the biggest growth journey to step into continually. Of course, I'm still on the journey of being more and more unapologetically myself, but doing that in front of people, doing that with an audience, having the criticism that comes through from people and relatives and all these things, and saying, you know what, this is what I believe in. This is my version of sharing my light. I'm going to do this anyways. Like you said, there's still fear, but you're doing it despite that. You're practicing moving through that by learning to recognize that your thoughts that are fear-based are just thoughts. Like they're not anything else other than your conditioned thought patterns. So yeah.
I love this because so last year, obviously I've been on my own journey just like you, right? So we're going through our own journey and we can only lead based in our authentic, connection to what we're teaching. So if you weren't living unapologetically you can't go out and teach living unapologetically you because the vibration doesn't move within the collective of energy. We know that, right? Because it's not an authentic energy. So I love that you brought this up because last year, I drove to Winnipeg. So I'm Canadian, right? I said this to you. And for some people who are listening to this, they may not know. I drove over to Winnipeg to see my parents. That's where they lived. I lived in Ontario. And I knew I was about to own part of my sexual expression through my branding. And at the time, I was a little bit scared, like you can understand this, but I knew it was a truth within me, right? I knew it was pulsing through me. I knew I needed to own it, and I knew I needed to step into it. So I literally got to my mom's house and I went, Mom, I just need you to understand that I am about to launch branding that has more of a sexual edge because it's part of who I am and it's a natural pulse and I'm supposed to bring it in and like the business, like in all this stuff, right? And she goes, whatever, Colleen, you do you. Now, my mom and I have worked a lot in this world, you know, and in this dynamic of energy. So I was like, okay, it's just kind of shocking. Literally, the branding that launched for my Unleashed masterclass, which was like I was literally naked, but with a thong underwear on, and all you saw was the back of me, was the highest sales I've ever had in a masterclass before ever. And I was like, whoa, like this is like a thing, you know, like, and I didn't understand what it really meant. And I'm sure that you can speak to this. I'm sure you've watched your people and within your own pathway start to crumble the masks or crumble the wall that they've put up. And now all of a sudden it's like, we're free, right? So like, I would love to just see what you have to say in connection with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kudos to you, because I know it can be really challenging with like our parents, especially like the need to have their approval is so deeply ingrained. And I just think that's really cool. I don't know. I think the reason why that kind of content attracts so much attention, like, sure, you could say like, well, you know, whatever. You could say a bunch of reasons. I think the reason is people look at that, at least, okay, so when I look at that, when I see a woman who's naked or barely clothed or, you know, I'm like, that woman is free. Yeah, she's free and she doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And don't we all want that? Like, isn't that what every person wants, is to not give a fuck?
Yeah. Like, and just own who they really are. I think so.
Totally.
Yeah. It's so awesome. And it's so fun. And I'm sure like there's a lot to unpack in this because of the fact that we move through a conditioning and most of us have been conditioned to stay in our little box and just follow the rhythm of what we're being told and to just be here in this containment where when you live an unapologetically you life and you own and you don't give a fuck about what others think. Now, not in a way like fuck you rebellion, but in a way of like, this is me. And if you can't hold it, then amazing, go over there or whatever it is, right? In the energy, like, how do you really explain this to people when you're doing this work? Because I'm sure clients come into your field and they've got all of their conformity. They've got the boxes they've been working within, and you as a mentor to help them move through this in all different ways that you do and the tools you use. But how do you get them to see and feel and understand this vibration that they live within and the vibration that's a possibility for them? I'd love to just hear kind of how this moves in your world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think it's really, really important to become deeply honest with ourselves about our desires.
Yes.
Not the desires that we think would look cool or, you know, whatever, but what do we really, really want? That can be hard to admit because there's often, of course, like the shadows, you know. One for me is like growing up, I was in a family where like rich people were like the bad people. Like that was the reason we were poor, is because rich people like took all the money and all this stuff. So anything that's like flashy or luxurious, I had to really work through, you know, for a long time, and still am, of like, okay, I'm allowed to have this. This is not hurting anyone, you know. So
yes,
I mean, have those shadows, and for many people, it's like the sexual expression or whatever. And maybe it's with like their spirituality if their family's super religious. But yeah, I love to just, I mostly with clients, like obviously I do coaching calls, but then I always provide custom journaling prompts after each session for them to like take as homework. I'm like super into journaling prompts. I have 2 guided journals on Amazon. I'm like obsessed.
oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, I think it's like such a good place to like do the deep work is in the journal. And I think it's a really, really safe place to start practicing being really honest with yourself about what you desire. And from there, we like uncovering what we actually want. And then, of course, yeah, like we can talk through, okay, what's like, let's talk about the fears that are covering it up. Like, let's dig into those. Are those actually real? Like, is that actually what you want? But I think just like owning the desires, being like, this is the life that I want. And if I want it bad enough, I'm going to do the scary things to get there.
Yes. And I love this. And we'll definitely put in the show notes the links to your journals on Amazon. So if people are like, oh my God, I want that journal, like let's get it in their hands, because I know and understand the value of journaling. And I am right now in a new level of like, I obviously join programs, I work with mentors, and one of my mentors is Victoria Washington, and I'm in her House of We, and we're going through like a 22-day wealth initiation right now. And literally on day 2, I like had 14 pages of writing based on the exercise we were, and like it's not like I kept thinking let's get to 14 pages, but it was like the deepness and the wound of the work and going into the depth like just kept coming out in expression. Can I read it all right now? No, not really. My writing's a little bit messy, but that's not the point. Like the point was to integrate that and really get real in the communication. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that we hide it. It's like deep rooted, and it's like, and we're getting, like, I call it the whisper. It's like we're getting whispers of things in our ear now, right? And we're starting to hear like, what if that was a possibility, and what if this was a possibility? So I know, like, once you get to work with people and you get them into understanding who they really are, now they can probably move through a couple of different ways: the healing through probably the breathwork side that you work within, and then also the possibility of now having, being, and holding all the things that they actually desire in a manifested world that they can now live within, because now they're moving in their truth. Is that correct? Like, you can, in all the ways you can move them through. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's also like where you and I, part of our like soul's mission is to be an expander for people, just for people to see someone doing life differently,
Yes.
and each of us that are these light warriors are doing that unapologetic expression of doing life differently and believing differently in a unique way, which is why like we're all so, it's always so perfect. Whoever we came to the table as is perfect. But yeah, like for me, when I was just getting into spirituality, but also wanting to start a business around it, there were expanders that I found that were doing this, that were showing up and just owning who they were. And I was like, wow, like if she can do it, I can do it. And it's so powerful. Just, it's another reason why we have to be ourselves, to be those expanders for people.
I so agree with you, and I call it like the ripple effect. And we don't even know, like, we have a puzzle piece, just like you said, right? Our mission, we all have been given our puzzle piece, and our job is to align in this beautiful piece of uniqueness that we're bringing to the world, whether it's in business structure, in the way we show up, in our vibrational energy, like all the things that we do. And our job is to hone in and get like, I love the word juicy, like it just lights me up. I'm just like, oh, I love that word. And like to get juicily aligned in this puzzle piece, that it's just like, this is life, and this is what we really are here to do, and the connection we build in the world and how we move it through. And I know that your piece of this puzzle is helping these people really move through this and honor it and own it in the space of that they can, like, I don't really teach manifestation. I teach people to embody who they are, which then creates a manifestation ripple. But I know that you probably have some keys that you use in this purity of this teaching. And I'd love for you to just kind of move through whatever you feel called to share in connection with manifestation, and how it shows up from your people being unapologetically themselves, or how it shows up in different ways in your world. Because I'd love to just hear how this moves through you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really important to start with a clear channel, or work towards creating that clear channel within yourself.
Yeah.
So that, we're clearing the shadows, we're clearing those fears and doubts that we might not even recognize on the surface, or that we might hear a lot in our head, but just think of as truth, the limiting beliefs that we all have as truth. I mean, I love breathwork as a tool for this too, because to me, that's a really powerful way to do like the deepest work of the emotions that we trap inside of us, the emotions we're so afraid to express. And, I was talking to a friend yesterday about this, like she knew someone who was going through something traumatic, and the friend said to her, yeah, I'm just like, right now, I'm just finding ways to distract myself. And I thought, wow, like, people do this on purpose. Like, this is what we do. We look for ways to suppress our feelings and bottle them up, not realizing they get stored as energy in our cellular body.
Yes.
And that really that's like the underneath the surface stuff that makes it hard to manifest what we want. So
Yeah.
breathwork to me is a really powerful tool for like clearing that out in a deep cellular way. So a lot of the work I think really starts from like that foundation of clearing your channel, clearing trapped emotions, starting to learn to process your emotions as they come up, so you're not suppressing them. And then getting really present too with another thing that breathwork helps for, but also like meditation and even just like being in nature and just taking a few breaths and just noticing life around you without always being caught up in thought.
Right. Yeah.
So that you can be more intentional about the thoughts and beliefs that you use as your fuel for manifesting.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's so fun is that I didn't understand the distractions that North America can bring to us, because it's like, and you live in a bigger city, and I used to live like north of Toronto, but still in a pulse of energy, there was a lot of distractions. And although we think we're being present, I didn't understand until I got to Costa Rica what it actually meant to be present. And I watch now, because I'm so aligned in that space of energy, that when I'm not being present, literally an iguana will walk down my driveway and I'll go, oh yeah. And because their spiritual meaning is about being present, they will remind me to be present in our body. So tell me a little bit about this, because I know this is a huge foundation in breath work and moving through the body, and then obviously in manifestation of being present in the body, and then also too in the traumatic work of being like, it's a foundation. And it's something that I think that we forget as humans about. And it's not, we don't have to pay for it. It's like this beautiful gift that we've been given that we forget about. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on this, because like, it just runs as such a cool thing and all the dynamics of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like presence is the most powerful thing and the thing that can bring us the most joy ever, like that exists, because it leads you to joy in everything that you can possibly find joy in. Yeah, it's really weird in our society. We're just so hardwired for being distracted, and
Yeah.
I notice now, like I notice when I'm overstimulated, which I never would have noticed, 5 years ago, because that was my entire life.
Yes.
Noise on in the background 24/7. No boundaries with like social media, no boundaries with screen time, just constantly in my overthinking.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I used to, at that time, there's nothing wrong with loud music. Like there's nothing wrong with it as a thing, just like nothing wrong with TV as a thing, right? It's all how you use the tools. But I noticed I was like really into like super loud, fast music all the time, because it fit my nervous system. Like it
Interesting.
went with my entire nervous
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. I love this.
Yeah. And so now I notice when I'm overstimulated, even just today, I got up early, went to an appointment, like a doctor's appointment, came home, did some things. I had this podcast interview, like I had like a kind of a busier day. And at one point I was feeling the pull to slow down. It wasn't like anything crazy was happening, but I was realizing I haven't taken a break today.
Right.
I'm kind of just rushing along.
Yeah.
I need to slow down. And it's so easy to ignore that pull. But yeah, once you start to become more centered, then you can notice when you're off centered. But
Right.
until you get to that point, it's just how life feels. Like it just feels so distracted and so busy,
Yeah.
and racing thoughts. It's crazy that that's the norm that we live in.
And I totally feel all of this, and I totally get it. And I can reference back, just like you, 5 years ago, hustle, 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 meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And when we got this blessed ability in 2020 to shut off, and the dynamic of all of that, like I'm not saying like any of the repercussions that move through whatever, but we had time to actually understand what it felt like to be a human again, right? Because we were then shut down into certain places. We weren't going out. We were working from home. We had breaks in time and quietness, even though sometimes some of the houses some people lived in weren't quiet, but you were then being drawn into other dimensions and other movement. But it was like, it almost like broke for me at that point in time, where I understood something like, what do I really value? What is really important for me? And if you were to put me back in a position where I am back to back out in, now I can't really do it here because it's a little bit different because I'm not in a place where there's all these networking events or these people I want to meet or that kind of thing. It's like if I go out to meet people, we're going for coffee or we're going to go to yoga and then have coffee after. And it's like, it's not like you have this highly scheduled life, when you live this way. And it's different, a different vibration that I never knew or understood until I started working within it. So I want to ask you this question because I think it's important because there's some people that are probably listening to this that go, I don't know how to get centered, or I don't really know how this really means to me. I'd love for you to just speak on like, what can somebody do to finally start to maybe hear themselves or to start to drop in? Because I know the breath work probably is a really amazing tool to get them into their body. What would you suggest for them if they're like new to this and really want to integrate this in their life and move through? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would start with like really short breathwork videos, like 5 to 10 minutes guided. Because it's like I'm also a huge fan of meditation, which goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have tried meditation. They're like, this is ridiculous. All I'm,
Yeah.
it's painful. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So breath work gives you something to do. You're like
Yeah.
doing, and you know how we're so much more comfortable with doing than with being and relaxing.
Yes.
I remember bragging to a coworker almost about how I was on vacation. I like couldn't relax because I'm just, I'm just such a hard worker that like I just can't relax. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel the same way on vacations. We were just so cool in the corporate world, just like with these
That's so
crazy
cool.
nervous systems,
Yeah.
so unhealthy."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's why I like love recommending breath work for this, because it shuts off the default mode network part of the brain, which is that chatterbox
Right.
that never shuts up. So it makes it a lot easier to ease into the present moment and kind of flip that switch a little bit. But I would start really small. I mean, even smaller than that, like you can start with like 3 minutes of meditation, just like setting a timer on your phone and just be present and just connect to your breath for a few minutes at a time.
Yeah.
um because for most people that's more realistic to get started with, and
Yeah.
instead of making it these big crazy goals, there's these long sessions that are just going to be so uncomfortable that our mind is like, yeah, let me think of every excuse I can think of to never do this again.
Yes. And I like, and obviously, I'm open and I know about breath work. I'm not a facilitator. I've never been trained in it, but I understand the value of it because of the fact that it gets us recentered back in the body. So when we breathe and we pay attention to our breath, we then become present in the moments of time where you just said like, from a very scientific perspective, you said like it allows us to shut off almost like the brain and actually to be here because we're paying attention to this, which I love. And it doesn't take long. Like you just said, like, let's practice with 3 minutes. Like, and when you're stressed out or overwhelmed, like I'm sure you can use this tool to reground, to move through those energies, in the benefit of all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Even like if you're having trouble sleeping, you'll notice that if you really focus on your breathing, that's all you have to do is follow your breath and notice your breath. You'll notice that it's you're kind of either focusing on your mind or your breath. Like your breath is like an anchor to the present moment.
Yeah.
And of course, your mind will keep interrupting it, and you'll go and you're like, oh crap, I was supposed to be paying attention to my breath. But that just little practice can really help to bring you back to a calmer place for things like sleeping, or if you like just went to a stressful meeting, you need to like take a moment to yourself. Like our breath, just noticing it is so powerful.
I know, and I vibe with this. I totally agree. And I love though that it's a tool we always have had. So it's almost like, God, divine, universal energy, whomever you speak to was like, okay, we know that these guys are going to go through some shit storms when they go into their physical form. So let's give them the breath as this beautiful gift to be able to recenter themselves. Right. And then we drop down into this body and we kind of forget that we've got this beautiful gift that nobody has to pay for, that is innately ours, that we could step into. And now it's like we're almost remembering to breathe. And I'm sure you've been finding this with the people you've worked with and your movement in the world. It's like people are finally understanding that we have this gift, which is our connection. And then once we get centered in it, like you said, now we can open up to other things. So now we can clear the traumas, and now we can actually step in to manifest through the breath and all the cool ripple effect that it creates.
Yeah, and like tuning into your intuition, you know? It's
Mhm.
just taking it to like the next level, the next level, next level.
Yeah. And I see that you're getting really jazzed up about it. So I'd love for like, do you have a story that that moves through your field right now of like a story about intuition that you've maybe seen a client use breath work and then open up, or even in your own life, have you seen it transition? I love cool stories because I think that they just like tell people about like so much possibility. But yeah, I just love to pass you the baton, we'll say, and whatever comes through you, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm excited. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, you know, the thing with this type of an energy tool, like there are people who have like crazy transformations from a breathwork session,
Mhm.
right? They have this realization, they remember this thing, they have this flashback, they have this, vision, but most of the time, I kind of want to stress that it's baby steps in a way. It's it's not like an overnight, we always think like something we want our life to change overnight, we want everything to like happen overnight. I feel like it's more like building a life where you do these things consistently,
Mhm.
and then it's a gradual shift into,
Yeah.
oh, I'm noticing more and more that like I thinking about this thing and then it happened.
Yeah.
And it just becomes more and more clear. Something interesting that I would love to share. I'm pregnant. I'm like 6 months pregnant almost. And I like thought my entire life, most of my, at least the past like 5 or so years, I like did not want kids. Been
Mm.
married for 5 years. My husband and I were like, we're not having kids, like we're just doing our thing and we're gonna just do all these things. And I started to notice over the past, like maybe the past year or so, that I would that I had these limiting beliefs and these fears that I was almost triggered around the conversations that would come up. Like I
Mm.
was resentful in a way. I just had this like victimness around it.
Yep.
And so because of the clarity from this type of work, it became clear to me, like, wait a second, something's going on here. Like I don't just not want kids. Like there's something underneath this. Let's
Interesting.
dig into that. And
Yeah.
so I like dug in my journal, like wrote all the fears out, like, and I found underneath that there was a desire. And it was just
Mm.
hidden by all these fears, all this conditioning, all these limiting beliefs. Being pregnant is the worst thing in the whole world. And, all the
All the
like
things.
content that just is like, there's a lot of like complaining and like, it's
Oh
one,
yeah.
like, sure, vent, find someone to talk to. Like, obviously, I'm not telling people like to suppress it, but I think our culture is very focused on complaining as a way to relate to others,
Agreed. Yep.
and it's more accepted than like celebrating, right?
Yes.
So but you know what also helped me with that, coming to that realization, was also seeing expanders, seeing women who were doing motherhood differently, who were like doing it alongside like building a business and traveling and all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me it's been super gradual. For most of my clients, it's been more gradual. Like you start digging into the breath work, you start to heal things, you notice you become less reactive. You
Mm-hmm.
notice that the things that trigger you, for one, you become more aware that it's triggering you, but then also things just aren't triggering you as much because you've
Yeah.
cleared that.
Yeah.
Um, it's really beautiful to see, like, clearing and healing the nervous system. You just become so much more relaxed and so much more aware.
Oh my God. We could dive into so many places with this and I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And congratulations on stepping into this next level of evolution in your life and really owning the fact that, for years you had this, I call it a distortion almost in your field, that you thought that that was your truth when it really wasn't. So when you started doing the work within that wheelhouse, because I know you've been doing the work for a while, throughout all different other aspects of your world, I'm sure, and owning your confidence and stepping in and really, being in that space, because you wouldn't be able to teach what you teach now if you haven't done that work. But it's really cool to see how all of a sudden you get to this next layer and you move through the fear of the conversation of going, oh my God, like I was actually scared of this because X, Y, and Z, because the conditioning, because all these things I saw, or my blah, 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 sister-in-law said that, or da, 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 and the dynamic of whatever moved through your awareness at the time. And it's cool. And I feel you about this. Like I'm in a position now where I wanted kids, then I didn't want kids, and then I was open to finding a partner. And if he wanted kids, I was open to that, but it would be under a certain guise. And now spirits dropped in. They're like, you're having two kids, and we need you to have two kids in this lifetime. And okay, I can hold this because there's a certain imprint I'm supposed to bring and through these kids and, help them activate light language and help them be purely in their authentic spiritual selves. And I'm like, okay, I can hold that. I get it. And now I'm like, okay, now we need to get the relationship in play, because it's not like I'm just going to go get get pregnant from whatever random thing. So now I'm like, okay, am I blocking some of this? So now I'm doing that work because the gift dropped in to be able to see it. And I love how you brought up the triggering dynamic too, because there's sometimes I get triggered and I go, okay, let's lean back in. Why is this coming through me? But it's that awareness, because we have done the work and we are conscious about it. And it means that we never are done the journey of doing the work, but we can at least bring it into our field in a new awareness and actually now move through it differently and not take it all on, or sit back and watch it play out around us when other people are charged and we're like, okay, I can hold space for you. And it's just a different vibe when we move through this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I feel like another piece of it too is there tends to be a big fear. And I don't know if you've experienced this with like sharing your life and sharing even like permanent content, right? Like a post is one thing, a podcast episode is more permanent, a book is extremely permanent, right? So the fear that what if I change my mind? What if I've shared this thing? And then what if, as we evolve, we're going to change our minds. And I started to kind of see that differently, where it's like, it's really brave to say, you know what? I changed my mind. And like, it's human and it's brave and it's real versus the fear of sticking with what we like planned, and I think the mind tends to keep us in the comfort zone. Of course, I call it the comfort cage, but in whatever ways it can. Right. And so it's really a cool thing for us to kind of like advocate for, like, you can change your mind, like it's safe.
Well, and here's like the real pulse and frequency changes within us, right? So it's like, today, this is my truth, right? And if you own your truth and you step in today and it's your truth, but a week down the road, your energy's changed and you've worked on that illusion and you've popped the bubble. Now, all of a sudden, the truth may maneuver around you. And it doesn't mean that the universal truth has changed. It just means that now you see another layer of truth that may be a different frequency than you lived in before. So if we can honor, like, today, this is my truth, and you are in the purity of your light, and you're like, I'm in it, I'm in it, I'm in it. Then as we move through, it's okay to maneuver. So it's okay to do that. And it's almost like we don't need the approval of others. But if this is your truth today and tomorrow the truth changes, as long as you are within your unapologetic self and you're owning that and you're like, boom, then that's an amazing thing. But it's when we're rooted, obviously, in all the other shame and guilt, and we feel like we have to, and all the dynamics of being in this beautiful, amazing world that we live in, that if we lead within that, then it creates distortions.
Yeah, it's so true.
Now, what are you finding? Like, I kind of want to leave this open question. What are you finding that you're seeing right now in the movement of energy, and the people maybe that are being like coming into your world, or the people you're working within? Like, what is this? What I call it the ribbon. Like, what is the ribbon moving through your rhythm right now? Just in the collective. I just would love to hear what's going on over there.
I mean, I feel like it's super positive. I feel like we're moving, like you mentioned COVID and how that kind of slowed the world down, and a lot of people shifted their value, like started to realize their true values, shifted their visions, decided they wanted to prioritize different things. And I think that was really beautiful in a lot of ways. And I think that we're still seeing a lot of that like ripple effect of, people also have become more interested in their health.
I agree.
Because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, was everything positive about COVID? Like, no, of course not. But like, where I am seeing this shift where, 4 or 5 years ago when I started meditating, I didn't know a single person who did that. I didn't know any, like, I wasn't following anyone who like hosted workshops. You know what I mean? For that, like, I thought this is like weird, like,
totally get you.
Business. And now it's just, I mean, I taught a meditation class at a corporate, like a, big local corporate office recently. And there were like 50 people or so. And I'm like, well, raise your hand if you've ever meditated. And like half the people raised their hand. I was like, and it was like, men and women, all ages, all ethnicity. Like, it was just so cool. I was like, okay, we're going somewhere.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, I love this. And you know what's so funny is meditation dropped into my field today because I like everything I do is channeled. Like that's how I live my life through intuition. I've learned that my human form leads me down more challenging pathways, and I have lots of examples of that. So if I just live within a spirit form and take aligned action every day, things are a little bit easier. So I'm like, so this morning I'm like, okay, guys, what's the email going out today? Which I haven't sent yet, but I will. And they're like, we want you to talk about your custom meditations and the benefit of meditating. So I'm not surprised this is dropping in again for us today because I'm like, I hear you. I promise I'll get it out. Like, you know, and I'm like listening to that. But do you do any stuff on YouTube with meditation? Like where do you do special stuff with people with meditations? Like I know you obviously have the breathwork side and all the dynamics, but just curious as can people find content of yours to help them maybe move through this too if they've never meditated. Mine are more channeled in activation stuff. Like I'm like, okay, let's move through shadow shit, or like I move them through a different vibration. But I'd love to just hear like what this pathway looks like for you for people connecting this way with you.
Yeah, I definitely do have some on YouTube.
Nice.
It's just my name, Leah Pardee. Most of them are pretty old, but that doesn't mean anything. They're just
No,
from a couple
yeah.
years ago. And then I have the Breath Portal, which is like an online membership site, which is a big online library of breathwork and meditation videos, workshops, classes that incorporate like some of the dance combined with breathwork and journaling and like all these things.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of embodiment. So we'll make sure the links are in the show notes too. So if you guys are feeling that, you can find Leah, go and see how all that plays out, and go to her YouTube channel as well to be able to get access to that. But I'm a huge embodiment like fanatic, we'll even call it now. Like I was guided that I need to do one embodiment session a month within a certain energy field and walk people through understanding that we hold energy in our body. And I know we touched on this already, but most people do not understand this concept at all. So I'd love to just hear your point of view as to how embodiment moves through you, because obviously dancing and moving and the breath work is somatic. So all of that is moving energy. Like, what does this show up for in your like world, and how can we help more people understand this value of being able to move this through themselves?
Yeah. It is interesting because yeah, like you say, people don't know about this,
Yeah,
but there's so much like science,
yeah,
there's so much evidence of this, it's nothing like woo woo. It's like seriously like research the science. It's fascinating,
yeah,
so um just the way that like our thoughts produce a chemical reaction that then produces an emotion in our body, like it is a physical chemical reaction, and if we don't process that emotion, it stays in our body. Like emotions are energy.
yes,
And so the embodiment, the movement, the yoga, the dance,
right,
all of it, even just walking, like, combining your breath with any of these things, like it helps to move that energy
yeah,
and shift things around and get things flowing and going. And I mean, there's different things combined, but that's part of the reason why movement feels so good in our bodies.
right,
We're
yeah,
shifting that energy, we're opening up space to then say, what do I want to feel? How do I want to be? Like, what is my truth here?
mm,
And then the other version of embodiment is kind of like the you being integrated in it, right? You
yeah.
like full being who you desire to be, and who you say you are as being is like that embodiment piece. So yeah, it's like all connected.
It is. And like you say, the body tells a story. And when people have pain in the body, it is a trapped emotion that's there. And then the more painful it gets, or the more we do not deal with that emotion or that traumatic experience that created the emotion in the body, the more it accelerates. And lately, I've been finding that a lot of the pain coming up for some of the people in my world is actually past life driven. And I don't know, do you deal with any past life stuff? Like, is that like an MO in your world? Like, I don't even know. Tell me.
No, I don't do anything with past life. Like I
Interesting.
don't teach
Yeah.
anything on that, but I
Yeah.
find it so fascinating.
I know. And like, I find like, if we can talk about manifestation in its, we collapse timelines. So meaning like we take, this is where we are and this is where we desire to be. We're merging the gap together, right? And whatever way the tools that you bring to the world bring that. I'm finding that right now I'm going to do a post about it today, like out on my Instagram, about the timelines are collapsing. So who we were in these past lives that hold a lesson moving into right who we are now are coming up and showing up. And so one of my girlfriend's sons has a toothache and they can't understand why the pain keeps moving from his teeth. And I just yesterday dropped in. I went, oh, he had a past life where he was tortured and his teeth were all ripped out. And there's a lesson that he needed to learn there that he didn't take on that's now showing up in his actual form now. And that's like way out there stuff, but like I live way out there. Like I play with dragons and I channel deities and like I have picnics with Isis. Like, you know, like I like live out there in that world. So for me, that is like a vibration. And for some people, like I can't handle it. And that's cool. And you don't need to handle it. But in the work you do, the pain is a thing in the body. And you can use your breath work and meditation to move it through. And I'm sure you've seen amazing results with some people actually taking it as a tool. Is that something that would you agree or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything from like chronic headaches being healed through breath
Mm,
work, chronic back pain, things like that. I used to have like a lot of neck and shoulder pain when I worked
mm,
in corporate. And I mean, it went away while I was still working in corporate. So it literally was just stress. It was anxiety.
yeah.
And it was just a manifestation of all that distress in my body.
Right.
And we tend to have this mindset that like, there, you know, oh, if we just have these like aches and pains, that's just like part of life or whatever. It's like, dig deeper. Like, what's underneath that?
And I love this. And I think it's sometimes challenging for us as humans to go deeper into that. So what would you suggest? Like, let's say we're working together and I have a lot of surface level healing that I did back. Like I started working in spirituality, like actively working in spirituality 14 years ago with my first ever spiritual mentor. What I was always connected, but obviously, you know, I wasn't fully awakened to that connection, or I purposely did things opposing to it on purpose to go through those experiences. Amazing stuff. But let's just say we were working together and I had a block about going deeper. And I just would love to just hear what you would have to say to me to be like, how do you get me to drop in more? Like, what would you say or bring me through to get me to go in to actually be honest and to take responsibility or to, because I think that that's a vibration moving through right now too. We're seeing is that we are desiring in a universal perspective, and it's coming through for us to take responsibility and just own. I didn't know, or I created that, or that shit all happened because of me. Like even the manifestation part, like you've been manifesting scarcity your whole fucking life. Like just take ownership of it so we can pop the fucking bubble and you can move through it. But most of us are challenged with this dynamic. So I just love to hear what your opinion would be on this. Like say like we were working together and you're like, Colleen, you fucking retard, let's go. No, I'm just joking. I know you wouldn't say that to me, but in my mind sometimes I say that to myself in love and light. You know, like go for it, the baton's yours, girl.
So one of my favorite questions to really encourage people to dig into this would be, what benefits are you possibly getting from this pain? Whether it's physical pain or whether that's emotional pain or whether it's something you're holding, clinging to. What could you possibly, if there was something that you're getting as a benefit to this, what would that be?
Yeah.
And it's often safety. It's often
Yep.
the same thing we've always had. A sense of victimhood can really feel good, you know?
Yeah, because they get attention, and because they get attention because they didn't get attention when they were younger, and like the whole inner child work and all that dynamic can show up. Yeah, for sure, I could see that.
Yeah. As long as I'm in this position, someone else has to take care of me. So I don't have to be responsible, because once I'm responsible, then I'm responsible, even though that's a beauty to be empowered.
Of course.
But like you said, we have to take that responsibility. We have to own where we've gotten ourselves to in order to be able to own where we're going and use our power that way.
Yeah. And tell me about like the power in the work that you do, like, and just watching the trickle effect of your power, because we all have a light. And I know the vibration, I feel the vibration, even though we just met, like everything for me is energy. So I feel the vibration of your light. So I just love for you to riff off about what this actually comes through as for you.
Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of people who want to start online businesses or who have online businesses. So a lot of it's them learning to show up in a different way, where they're showing up more authentically, where they're moving through their fear, they're just showing their face and talking to face to camera, doing whatever has been holding them back and scaring them, starting podcasts. And it's really beautiful to see a ripple effect on that scale, because then they have their own ripple effects with their own clients.
Yeah.
But with people who maybe aren't in that space, working with like moms, for example, and watching them be able to become more patient, and watching them be able to become less reactive and less triggered. And then the effect that will have, like that ripple effect, it's massive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think those are like my two favorite things to see, is people becoming more authentically them and owning that. And then also the side of learning to release emotions, not only repressed emotions, but emotions that we have at the time, without the shame of feeling those emotions, and without the discomfort. Like there's still discomfort, but you're like, no, this is good. I need to feel this. And becoming less triggered and reactive, because think about a society where we weren't just freaking out over the tiny, you're not just shooting someone because you're in traffic and they honk at you. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. No. And it's like, and it's the one piece. And that's this is the thing. I think sometimes we diminish ourselves to not understand that one person can make a change. Because if you're calm in your energy and that's what you exude out, that imprint is moving. And the more we move in our light, like I say this, I give this example all the time. When you're walking down the street, when you're in grocery stores, when you're buying clothing, when you're driving your car, when you're at the mechanics, wherever, if you can keep emulating that light within you and that purity of peace and joy and love, or whatever it is that you really feel called, like even some of us are like that warrior, like courage, like I want to emulate courage, step in, like you got, and you hold it. It's not just about you and you in your own car in your traffic, doing your thing and being at peace. That emits a ray of energy or a frequency. So now maybe the 3 cars or 4 cars around you that are blocking you in can feel it. And then imagine now 5 of the cars, right? And now the 5 cars go in, and now there's like 20. It's like it ripples so fast. So it's like, I think sometimes we forget that we, even though we're just one, like what will one vote do? What will one person do? But it's not. It's that ripple, right? And that small pebble dropping in. And now all of a sudden, we don't even know. We don't even know.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautifully said. And like, even I needed that reminder of like, yeah, it's so true. Every single interaction that we have with someone, just smiling at a stranger, you just don't know how that could affect them. Then they smile at the next stranger, like it's crazy.
It is.
I
And
love,
it's, yeah.
I love like when I remember, which is hardly ever, but like when I remember to like pay for the person behind me at Starbucks,
Yeah.
like little things like that, and like spreading, like you see that ripple effect where it's like a long line of people that have, people want this, like people want to feel better, people want to be in gratitude and joy and positivity, but someone has to go first.
And like I live and breathe in that mantra of like I go first, and I go first in my world. And if you go first in your world and someone else goes first in their world, it's those pieces that keep coming together, right? And I think that we, just like we've been talking about being present and like the distractions, people want love, joy, peace, laughter, adventure, whatever it is that they want in their life, safety, all of that stuff. But it starts with us owning that in our world. And the more we ripple that into the space of, we all do, whether we're having a shitty day or not, if someone comes up and gives us love and we feel love from them in a certain way, shape, or form, not even like lovers in our relationship, like love from a child, even. Like I have a client of mine, his daughter walks in the grocery store hugging people, like just saying, and she's 4 years old, and she just was like, can I hug you? Like and it's like she dismantles the energy, and she's supposed to do this, like we talk about soul mission and pathway, like we could go there, but like, what if every single one of us just made a vow today to go smile at one person? Would it change the ripple effect in the world? Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, right? It's cool. I know that you and I could probably riff for 500 million years. And once I get like a Joe Rogan studio and I fly people out on my private jet, we can sit for hours at a time. However, this podcast at this moment of time usually sticks to about an hour. So I want to do a couple things before we pop off. I want you to, before I get you to kind of share your final thoughts on like energy in the collective, what you're seeing, how people can move through like the pieces of your soul mission in the earth. I want to know. So I'm going to obviously share all the links that we said, and I'm going to prompt my brain right now to remember everything I said I would do. Once we get off this call, this is me just being honest and true and who I really am, unapologetically myself. But what are you up to these days? Where can people find you that you would want to kind of really guide them into? Because I know that there's going to be some people that are like, oh my God, we're going to get your YouTube channel up and links to meditations and stuff. But like, what's jamming on your heart in connection with what you're putting out into the energy world to help people shift, understand, live through? And then I'll ask you the next question after.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, these days I'm sharing about really just making choices that are, I feel like a lot of my content lately is like making different choices than the people around you, and how that's often triggers other people, and how like moving through just showing up in your, like we've been talking about, but like your authentic expression, and challenging the mindsets that you see around you. Like for me, it's challenging a lot of the mindsets that I hear around pregnancy and motherhood and what it means to like have a family, and saying, no, I'm going to do this my way. Like, this is the way I'm going to do things. It might be different, but here's what we're doing. So I feel like that's where, like, on Instagram, that's where I'm talking about all of that. My podcast, Bare Naked Soul.
Right.
Yeah, that's my jam right now. Live
Yeah, and
life different.
you're obviously 6 months pregnant, so we know that you're going to be balancing a different world in the next little while. Are you still taking on one-to-one clients? Are you looking more to get people into like the breathwork membership? Like, where are you serving the collective right now in your offers?
Yeah, I do. I still am doing some one-on-one client work.
Yep.
But I'll be taking a break from that for a while,
Of
when
course.
the baby comes.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just like teaching through the podcast, teaching through Instagram. Yeah, the breath portal. I do monthly workshops that are live for breath work every month. I have right now I have Heal Breathwork Academy, which is where I'm actually certifying people to become breathwork facilitators and like spread that message and that light on their own. So
I
yeah.
love it. Okay, cool. This is so amazing. Yeah. So then what do you like if we were to kind of end this with like hoorah, what would you want to say? Like whatever's on your heart to say to people. So, we've been through this conversation of like manifestation, being unapologetically yourself, listening to like your own rhythm, your soul's mission, using breath work to move through the body. We can heal pain. Like we've been all over the place, which is exactly how I love doing these things. But what would you want to kind of leave people with, and what energetic capacity and all that kind of stuff, just wherever?
I would say, like, for me, the takeaway from our incredible conversation is like, be brave enough to be you. Know that that's going to be a light. Like, know that there is a light in you. It may not look the same as someone else's light that you see, but know that when you're being yourself, someone else needs to see that and will benefit from that and will cause a positive ripple effect. And so go to the grocery store being yourself, whatever that means to you, and know it's enough, and know it's so needed, and it's exactly what the world needs right now.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for that reminder. Yeah, because we are all a unique imprint and we all have our own uniqueness. And even though we maybe have commonalities, like even Leah and I have commonalities in the way we see the world, it doesn't mean that we are the same. So we need to really understand that the way we do business, the way we build our business, the structures we create in our life, how we show up, our self-care, all of it is different in our own vibration. So I love that you brought that up to be able to kind of close off this like beautiful expanded energy that we've worked within today. We'll make sure in the show notes that all the links are there, that people can find you on Instagram. We'll link up your podcast. We'll make sure that all of that is there for people to lean into, because I really feel like if we are inclined to an energy, we know that that soul is meant to help serve us in whatever capacity it is to help us keep expanding. So I'm just grateful that you reached out to me. I'm grateful that we stepped into this together. I'm grateful that we, have the courage to keep speaking our truth in the world. And I just want to kind of leave everybody with that and move through. And just, Leah, thank you so much for the amazing time today and all the juiciness you shared in the collective.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it totally has been. All right, guys, we will see you again on the next podcast.